from the feminist work is what I'm going to call linking the little and the large. And the large is the global story that we've just heard. But the little is also the on-the-ground, the kitchens and the meals, the immediate experiences of the everyday work of feeding a child or an infant. I have many points I wanted to raise on that, but sometimes when I wander, it's better to read a piece. I'm thinking that that one way to get a beginning perspective on the little and the large, I'd like to pick up on a point Michael raised this morning. Consider this. Mothers act as filters to mediate between their infants and their environments, beginning when they are still in the womb and long after. This accommodation between mother and child is not about regulation or perfection. It's about adjusting to each child every day. Nurturing practices and feeding set the stage for the messiness, uncertainty, and flow of everyday life. Taste socialization is a good example of this flow. As a pregnant woman eats, her food flavors the amniotic fluid created in the growing fetus, a taste for the flavors that will reappear in colostrum and later in breast milk. And recall the Swedish video that when the attraction of the baby to the smell and to the taste. And as mothers continue eating their preferred local foods, their indigenous foods, they flavor the breast milk further, setting the infant up to recognize and enjoy the flavors of local household foods in the form of the complementary foods introduced about 6 months of age and when the child is ready for the addition of new foods. Taste then becomes one route to the external world, one part of the sensory alignment between mother and child. And this is part of what we need to be sensitive to as we begin to look into kitchens and into the way meals are organized locally. For example, are there mortar and pestles in every kitchen? Are there many pots or one pot for the family? And out of that pot, a small amount is taken to create a certain kind of weaning food. This discussion really of home-based versus commercial foods needs to be lodged in the kitchens of the women that are preparing the food. And I think it's critical that we keep in mind how much we have to know about local food systems, because in fact, every suggestion that we make on infant feeding is part of a household food system. These are not separate. These are not separate kitchens for, babies and other people. I was so shocked. I was working in Laos, and I went to the FAO office there because I wanted to learn more about child feeding. And I asked if I could look at their records because I didn't know the difference in the meal structures of the different ethnic groups in Laos. And they let me use the library, and there were two kinds of documents. One was the measurement and the indicators of child malnutrition, and on another shelf was the production of rice per province. I said, well, that's fine, but would you tell me, please, I need to know how do Hmong people eat as opposed to lowland Lao? I noticed immediately that there's a big difference when you have glutinous rice, sticky rice. An 8-month-old baby holds the rice like this and, quote, feeds itself. As soon as it, quote, feeds itself, I think that's part of the break. They're much less likely to continue with breastfeeding. A subject that I've noticed in other Southeast Asian countries, when there's a rice gruel that has to be, fed very carefully, like this, one by very slow, like this, then the mother has very intimate contact with the baby. The breastfeeding perhaps continues first, and then the feeding there. There's that intimacy and closeness. A big difference, and all that was an observation between two different kinds of rice, setting up two different kinds of meal structures. I also worry and would think that as we look at local food systems, We have to ask questions about how every new food fits into the existing meal pattern. So what will happen if Plumpy Nut or Cerelac becomes a high status food? You play it back to the gender point, and how much do you want to bet that men will try to bring a case of this food as a gift to acknowledge paternity or to support the woman? So how do you change that you want men to be incredibly supportive of that household food, but we need to understand how foods can become prestige status symbols as well before we can think about changing any of these issues.